It's like Christmas time here at the workshop. All the parts I ordered came in, and we can finally get this build underway. Let's tear these open and take a look at what we got. Alright, here we go. Let's rip these open. I originally planned on making AGP my limit for the GPU in this build. In my mind, it would have been too easy to do PCI Express, and I wanted to make this a little more interesting. I mean, I have a drawer full of old PCI Express cards that would destroy all the older games I plan on using this computer for. I figured I could pick up whatever the best AGP card was for super cheap, and after some research, I found the consensus to be the Radeon HD 3850 as the most powerful AGP card. So I set off to eBay to find one. Once I saw how much these were selling for, around $150, and that people were actually paying that price, I realized I needed to figure something else out. I checked some other options, but anything worth getting in AGP was stupid expensive. I had no idea there was a market for AGP card collectors. After thinking about it, I decided the only way to go was PCI Express, but I couldn't just put any card in there. I wanted to keep it period correct, sometime around 06 or 07. There was one issue I had to figure out though. I had already bought a processor, a Pentium 4 socket 478. I got this because 1, since I planned on AGP, LGA 755 was pretty much not an option, and 2, it was only $6 shipped. The issue was finding a board that supported this socket while having a PCI Express slot. I did some research and found that there were only a few options out there, but the eBay gods smiled on me and I found this BioStar board brand new for 40 bucks. So here's the board I got. Like I said, it is brand new. That's pretty nice. You take a look inside, it looks like never even been gone through. Got all the IO shield, cables, manual. And a nice new board. Another good thing about going with this board is I get SATA. I hadn't planned on having that if I went with another socket 478 board. You can see the PCI Express slot right there. We got 2 sticks for RAM. And I think this board will do nicely. For RAM, there was no reason not to go with 4 gigabytes, and I ended up with these Kingston sticks rated at the speed of the motherboard at 667 megahertz. Interesting thing about them is they're like a half size. If you compare them to a normal stick, you can see here, they're quite a bit shorter. These ended up being $10 shipped, so I can't complain there. Here's our $6 Pentium 4. It is model SL7E5, rated at 3.2 gigahertz. Finding a cooler for this was a little tricky. There's not a lot of socket 478 coolers out there. I did stumble across a couple like stock style ones, but they said they were rated for lower speed processors. Thankfully I came across this one on eBay. I think I paid about $20 for it, but it was advertised as like not being used. So it looks like it'll do just fine. It's a pretty beefy heatsink. Small fan. I mean, I guess back then they didn't have 120s on their heat sinks, but it'll do. You can tell this thing has definitely never been used. And you can see there's the block. For the hard drive, I could have just thrown an SSD in it and called it a day, but that wouldn't have been keeping with the spirit of the build. So I went with what was best at the time, a 10,000 RPM Western Digital Raptor. This one is 160 gigs and it'll be plenty for what we plan on doing. I actually had a couple of these kicking around, so this didn't cost me anything. So here it is, the most important part of the build. I had to pick something that was iconic from the time period, and what card was more iconic than the NVIDIA 8000 series? An NVIDIA 8800 GTS. This is a 512 megabyte model, and it set us back $24 shipped. And yes, our processor will definitely bottleneck this card. Here's everything. By my calculation, including the cost of the case, I'm in the hole around $139. God, I hope my wife doesn't find out. Alright, let's go ahead and start putting this thing together. Pop it right in. Alright, and she's in. Next we'll do the tiny sticks of RAM. Alright, let's see if we can get that CPU cooler installed. Throw on a bit of thermal paste here. Remember, you only need like a little bit. Like just a little. That should do it. And there we go, all installed. It's looking nice and beefy. Those clips were insane to get on. I had to put so much pressure, I thought I was gonna break something. But it's on and it's secure and it's looking good. Okay, let's go ahead and get the motherboard installed. I'm pretty confident it's gonna fit, but I am concerned about the I/O shield fitting, so let's take a look. Oh, looks like it fits like a glove. All right, and let's drop the motherboard in. Beautiful, like it was made to be in there. All right, let's go ahead and put our crown jewel in here, the 8800. And just like that. So I figured before I go any farther, I should try and power this on and see if it can post. Let's take a look. That'll help. It's alive. Let's see if we get anything. Anything? Damn, it looks like a no. Okay, so that first time I tried, I was plugging it directly into the motherboard off of this VGA cable, because when I checked, I couldn't find any DVI cables, and that's all this uses, DVI and a random S-video. So I thought, well, maybe it wants to boot off the graphics card, so I started looking around and I came up with this. I've got a DVI to HDMI, which goes to an HDMI to VGA directly into this monitor. Will this work? Who knows? But it's worth a shot. Hold on to your butts. Yes! We got it. And look, 3.2 gigahertz, Pentium 4. Oh man, I'm so excited. It's alive. Alright, we got that Raptor drive mounted in the cage that came with this case, and now we'll drop it into its spot right here. We're going to go ahead and use the SATA cable that came with this one, keeping with the theme, nice orange. Okay, here it is, pretty much all finished. Other than tidying up a little bit of the cables, it should be good to go. I also do need to still figure out a way for some extra fans for cooling. Like I mentioned before in the previous video, the only cooling on this is what's on the processor, and then the power supply acts as an exhaust fan. So I'd like to figure out something to mitigate that and help out. Hopefully we can get something that doesn't mar the case up or anything. When I first fired this up to check that it was working, I was so excited to see it turn on and display anything that I didn't realize it was kind of just hanging at the post screen. So when I fired it up to install Windows, I sat here and waited, and waited. It just hangs here forever. If you wait long enough, it'll start to show other devices in post, but it'll get to the PCI Express and just hang and never load any farther. I tried to wait this out, and after like 10 minutes, it still hadn't gotten any farther. I tried to swap the GPU and change the RAM, but nothing changed. I was double checking my components, and the only thing I found that might be the culprit is the processor. The one I got isn't specifically listed as compatible in the motherboard documentation. Considering I'm only $6 into this processor, I figured I'll source out one that is specifically listed in the documentation as compatible. Finally have a processor in to finish up this build. It's been about 2 weeks since I was able to work on this thing. I had to look at the manufacturer's documentation and find a compatible processor, or at least I think that's why this wasn't working. So I got a compatible processor. There was only a couple options on eBay available, but I did find one that matched the specs of the other one, but the model number itself was on the supported list. I ordered that one and it took a couple weeks and nothing happened. Like the tracking never updated and it never showed up. So I ended up finding another seller with the same model, ordering that one, and thankfully that one showed up. Looks like it's good to go. We have model number Pentium 4, that is SL6WG, and we'll never be able to focus on that. So we're going to go ahead and remove the heatsink, swap the processor out. I'm really hoping I don't have to tear this thing apart too much and destroy my beautiful cable management I have going on in here. So let's get to work and see if I can get this thing to boot up successfully. I'm going to go ahead and try and remove these clips. In the previous segment, when I put these on, there was so much pressure. I was really afraid that I was actually going to damage something. So I'm hoping I can get them off and back on while it's in the case with no real problems. So, wish me luck. I actually don't even know how these come off at this moment. Oh, that wasn't a good sound. Alright, just to be safe, I started pulling stuff out, hoping I could get in here and get a little more access, but I'm super uncomfortable trying to pull this out inside of here. So I'm just going to pull this board out real quick. I can get it out relatively easy, and all my beautiful cable management should be able to go back with no problem. I'm really hoping this processor was what was causing the issues. Otherwise I've been sitting around waiting for a whole lot of nothing. Our problem here is that this clip that needs to come off, there is a lip right here that goes around this plastic bracket. And to get that lip off, you've got to push down and get enough clearance to pop it off. I'm already pushing down on this thing super hard, and I don't know, it doesn't feel like it wants to come off. Ooh, there we go. Dang. That thing was under some pressure for sure. I'm not looking forward to putting this back on again. Man, I don't think I used enough heat compound. We'll take care of that when I swap the processor. So I looked back at the footage of when I first put this together and realized you guys were definitely going to give me crap for not putting enough thermal paste. Like, my application was terrible. I just put it in the middle and it probably wasn't nearly enough. So I'm using this stuff. It came with the heatsink. I don't know if it's any good or not. I used up all what I had left of my Arctic MX4 on the previous application. So this one I just was going to do the X method because that seems to be pretty popular. I got a nice one line here, and then I kind of ran out on the next line, so I mean, I think it'll be enough, but we'll see. I'm also, since I got some of the good stuff left on here, I figured if I just put this right on top, it'll combine it, and it'll like make it better. So I'm not even going to clean this off because it's on here pretty nice, and we're just going to go with it that way. It's time to put those brackets back on. Let's see if we can get them on there without breaking anything. I still don't get these things, how they can be so tight. Whew. Okay, that one went on easier than the first time. time to put this thing back together again. I've got it put back together and I'm ready to power it on and see if we can get past the BIOS screen. I haven't tried this yet or no testing. This is the first time with this new processor, so let's see what we get. We get nothing. Okay, I think I got it. Let's try this again. Okay, the Pentium 4 is recognized. Well, this is what it did before, where it just sat here showing you the processor. So I don't have high hopes that this is going to work. Alright, things are changing. That took forever, but I don't think we're going to get past this. This is the exact same thing that happened before. It just gets to this PCI Express slot message and then nothing happens.